Lachain, we're now on Daf Mem Chesamid Beis. Hirchiva Shaol Nafsha Upara Pia Lebli Chok V'Yard Hadara V'Hamona Ushaona V'Olaz Ba. The netherworld has enlarged its appetite, opened its mouth wide without limit, and into it will descend the glory of Zion and her multitude and her horde and whoever revels within her. So we have the 5 calamities to the world, and the indulgent individuals would descend into Gehenna. The Mishnah says, Misha Mesu Nevi'im Arishonim, Man Nevi'im Arishonim. At what point did the Ur V'Turim cease? Rav Huna said, David Ushlomo Ushmul Ushlomo. So after Shlomo, there was no longer Urim V'Tumim, and the Gemara is going to reject this. Rav Nachman Omar, Bimei David, the Urim V'Tumim was consulted at the time of David. Zimnin Sok, Zimnin Lo Sok. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. For example, Shaul Tzadok, V'Olsalo. So when Tzadok, the Kohen Gadol, would consult Urim V'Tumim at David's request, then it worked for him. But Shaul Avyasar, V'Lo Olsalo. Shenemar Vayal Avyasar. So this is a chapter in Shmuel Beis, Tesvav, that after David had to flee from Avshalom, from Yerushalayim, he inquired of the Urim V'Tumim through Avyasar, who was the Kohen Gadol, and Avyasar was unsuccessful in eliciting a response. David then asked Sadok, who was an ordinary Kohen at this point, and Sadok posed the question and succeeded in getting an answer. So David took this as a sign that the divine spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, had departed from Evyasar, and therefore he replaced Evyasar with Tzadok as the Kohen Gadol. So Tzadok now becomes the Kohen Gadol. And that's what the pasuk means, Vayal Evyasar, he departed from the high priesthood. Masiv Rabbi Bar Shmuel, how could you tell me, Rav Huna, that after Shlomo there was no longer a power of the Urim V'Tumim when the pasuk says Vayehi? Okay, this is in Zechariah. This is Vayehi Lidrosh Elokim V'mei Zechariah Hamevin Biros Elokim. He used to seek out God in the days of Zechariah, a man who had understanding in the vision of God. So this pasuk speaks of King Uzziah, who originally was a straight guy. Later on, he messed up. And he was a king 150 years after the death of Shlomo Melech. When it says he seeks out God, Hamevin Biros Elokim, doesn't it mean that he consulted with the Urim V'Tumim? And the answer is no. King Uzziah did not seek God's word through the Urim V'Tumim, but Benavim, rather through Zechariah's prophecy. The Gemara again is going to challenge Rav Huna. Toshma, Mishechorav Beis HaMikdash, Harishon, Batlu Orei Migrash, Upasku Urim V'Tumim. Okay, so this is after the Churban of Bayis Rishon, right? So we're talking about 4 centuries later. Upasak Melech Mi Beis David, there no longer was a king from Beis David. The Imlachshecha Adam Lomer, a person says to you that I'm going to refute you because Vayomer Atartishta, this is Nehemiah Novi, Lahem Asher Lo Yochlu Mikodesh Kadoshim Adamod Kohen L'Urim V'Tumim. So Nehemiah instructed them they should not eat of the holy offerings until a Kohen will arise and inquire of the Urim V'Tumim. So the Jews were returning from Bavel to build the second Beis HaMikdash, and the pasuk says that all the Kohanim whose genealogy was suspect were forbidden to eat from karbonos, from Kodshei Kodshim. The only way to clarify their status would be through the Urim V'Tumim. It would seem, therefore, to indicate that the Urim V'Tumim did operate during the period of Bayis Sheni. Again, 4 centuries and change after Shlomo Melech. So more loka Adam Shomer L'Chaver Ad Sheyichyu Mesim V'Yavo Mashiach Ben David, until the dead will be resurrected and the anointed son of David will come. So the Navi didn't mean to say that they had a solution through the Tumim. He was just advising that the Kohanim would have to wait for the resurrection and the coming of Mashiach when the Ur V'Tumim would reserve its functioning. But in any event, the Brisa clearly indicates that as long as the first Beis HaMikdash stood, the Ur V'Tumim was operating, and that's against Rav Huna. El Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. We have to change the girsa here. Ma Nevi'im Arishonim, no. It's Hafuki Michagai Zchayu Malachi. Even though these were the last of the Achronim, they're called Nevi'im Rishonim. The Achronim Ninu, they were the last of the prophet. Tanu Rabbanon, Mishemesu Chagai Zchayu Malachi, Nistalka Ruach HaKodesh MiYisrael. So we see that Ruach HaKodesh terminated with the death of the last of the Nevi'im, Chagei Zchayu Malachi, Afal Pikein Oyim Mishtamshim B'Baskol. And even after the termination of Nevuah, they still could rely on a heavenly voice, on a Baskol. And that's a certain level of divine communication below prophecy. It's not the heavenly voice itself, but rather Baskol means the echo of the heavenly voice. Shepam achas hayu mesub b'aliyas beis Guria b'Yericho. That's where the Chacham got together. And nitna le'em Baskol min hashamayim v'yomer. There was a declaration from the heavens through a Baskol. Yesh b'chem adam echad sheroy shetishul shkin olav el she'ein ador roy lekach nasnu einam b'hil hazakim. Hil hazakim was the great manifestation of Hanova, and therefore he was roy for Ruach HaKodesh and Hashras Hashkinik. Shemesis Bidu, and after he died, they eulogized him and they said, Hey Chassid, hey Anov, Talmido Shel Ezra. He followed in the footsteps of Ezra, and just like Ezra led the Jewish people from Bavel back to Eretz Yisrael to build a second bias, then the great Hillel followed in Ezra's footsteps, and as a scholar, he immigrated to Eretz Yisrael from Bavel. Both held positions of leadership in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore he is called Talmido Shel Ezra. Shuvpama Acheres. On another occasion, they were up in the attic in Yavne. Nitla and Baskol Mishmayim V'Amalehem. Yesh b'chem odom echad sheroy shetishra shchina olav. El she'ein doro zakon lekach. Nosnu eineim b'shmuel hakoton. He was the great personification of Hanova in his time. K'meisis bidua he'onav he'chasid talmido shel Hillel. He followed in the footsteps of Hillel, and he was an onav and a chasid. V'afhu amar b'shas misoso. He said at the time of his death, Shimon, he prophesied, Shimon v'Yishmael lecharva. Shimon and Yishmael, these are the great Haruge Malchus, will be executed by the sword. This is a reference to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel II, the Nasi, Rabbi Yishmael the Kohen Gadol, two of the Asaruge Malchus who were killed by sword, and Chavruei Lektola, and their colleagues would be put to death by other means, like, for example, Rabbi Akiva, that Sarku Besoro, Ushar Amal Abiza, and the rest of the nation will be despoiled. The Akon Sagian Asidin Lebeise Al Aman, terrible tragedies are destined to befall the Jewish people. This was all prophesied by Shmuel HaKohen. The Afal Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava Bikshu Lomar's Hey Chassid, Hey Anav, when Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, one of the Asaru Malchus, died, they again wanted to use that nusach of a hesped, El Shenitri Fashosh Ein Maspidim Al Aruge Malchus. We cannot eulogize people who are executed by the government, because if the government gets wind of that, they will suspect us of being rebellious against the government, and by paying tribute to the king's enemy, that will lead to a terrible punishment. Mishachar Beis Hamikdash batal hashamir, Ton Rabbanan Shamir shebo bana Shlomo's Beis Hamikdash. The Shamir was critical and used by Shlomo Melech to build the first temple. Shenemar v'abayis b'banoso even shleima maso nivna hadvarim kiksam divrei Rabbi Yehuda You telling me that there was nothing of metal that was used to cut the stones? It says that they were filed with a file. So we see clearly that it wasn't just the shamir. Imkain, so the Gemara says that if it's so that they use these tools, these iron tools, to quarry and chisel the stones of the temple, is matam alom lo nishma bebeisa bebayis bibeno. So they didn't hear any of the hammers or the chisels or the irons. It couldn't be heard. And the Gemara answers, Shoy misakin bachutz umachnas bifnim. They would prepare the stones outside of the Beis Hamikdash and then bring them inside. So there were no iron utensils that were heard in the Beis Hamikdash itself. Amar Rebbe Nirim Divrei Rabbi Yehuda b'Avnei Migdash, v'Divrei Rabbi Nechemia b'Avnei Beisa. When Shlomo HaMelech built his palace, then he used these iron tools in order to make his house. But with respect to the stones of the Beis Hamikdash, Nirim Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, and that means Advarim Kiksavam, and it was only the Shamir. Rabbi Nechemia Shamir L'mayasa. According to Rabbi Nechemia, why do you need the Shamir if you use these iron tools? And now we're talking about just one second here, the stones of the ephod and the choshen, right? There were 8 big day kahuna gdola. The Kohen Gadol had 8 vestments. 2 of them were the ephod, the apron, and the choshen, the breastplate. At the end of the ephod, the apron, there were 2 shoulder straps, and there were gold settings, and they contained precious stones. 1 per setting. They were called the Avnei Shoam. We learned about this back on Daf Lamed Vav. And on these 2 stones, the Avnei Shoam, were engraved the names of the 12 tribes of Israel, 6 per stone. And the Torah says, Pisuchei Chosam, the Ein Mesartan Alem Bismo. We cannot etch upon them with a cutting tool, Mishum Shenever Bimilu Osam, in their entirety. Like Kosev, you just like to make the outer tracings, Omar Lehem Shamir Bachutz, and then you apply the Shamir and the Shamir on these tracings, on this dio. Minivkos me'aleim, the stones would split and form the letters by themselves. Kite'ena zu shedivkas b'yimos hachama, ve'ena chasera klum, or kibika zu shedivkas b'yimos hachshamena chasera klum. Panarabana, we learned in the Brisa, Shomer zebri also kisa ora. It's the size of a barley kernel. Umisheshis mei brachis never was created in Sheshis mei brachis, as the Mishnah establishes in the 5th parak of Avos, that the Shamir was one of several things created on the first Shabbos Eve at Shvaila Ben Shmoshos. And the Ein called Dover Kashi Achalaman, for they could break through anything. But Mem Mishamim also, but where do you put it away? How do you guard it? V'karchin also b'svogim shel Shem, we wrap it up in wool. And menichin also b'itni shel eve shel avor malea subei Torah. We place it in a lead tube that's filled with barley bran. Amarav Ami Mishacharev Migdash Rishon Batla Shira Parantasan V'Schusa Levana. The paradinod, silk, and white glass ceased, which means that as a result of the destruction of the Migdash, the well springs of wisdom were stopped up, and Israel lost the crowns of Torah, and the crowns of priesthood, and the crowns of Malchus. Man became degraded. So these exquisite items that were meant for the adornment of dignified people were taken away. Tanyanami hachi mishacharev migdash risho batla shira parnada uschuchis levana v'rechev barzel yeshom raf yayin korosh haba misnir. So this kind of silk and the white glass, the iron chariots, and even the gelled wine that comes from Snir, which resembles Adoma Kigule Tvela, all this ceased to exist. V'nofis tzufim, what's nofis tzufim? I know Amarav Solish at Sotah, al gabe nafa, fine flour that floats upon a sieve. V'domali isa shenilosha b'dvash v'shemen. V'levi omar shtei kikros adidbakos b'tanur v'tovchos ubos ad shemagios zulazu. They swell, right? So you have two loaves of bread stuck to the walls of an oven. They swell and become inward until they touch each other. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Omar zed dvash abominat sipia, from high mountains. So the bees bring down this honey. My mashma. Where do we see that honey comes from the mountains? Kidamitagi Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes was an expert in Aramaic, and he interpreted Kema de Natazon de Bar Yosa, like bees that ascend, right? They ascend all the way up to the mountains. V'shaiton berume dialma, and they fly around the heights of the world. Umaision duvsha me isbe tura, and they bring honey down from the mountains vegetation. Tanan Hasan, we learned in a Mishnah in Masechet Machshirin called Anitzot Tar. If you pour something from one vessel that's tar into something that's tameh, then that which is left in the vessel is still tar, chutz mitvash v'zifin v'hatzapichin, except for tzifin and tzapichin, and these are kinds of thick honey, and since it's exceedingly thick, therefore we nitzak ketafras. In other words, even that which is left in it becomes tamei zifin. Amar Yochanan dvash zifin bo. Okay, we'll see exactly what ziyuf here is going on. Ziyuf means falsification of the truth. Reish Lakish Amar al Shem Makoma. It comes from a place called Zif. The chsiv Zif b'telem uvlos. Ki yotze b'dovrata omer. A similar thing you find. The Zifin came and said, "I'm going to show you where David is hiding out." And this was a fabric. My Zifin. Who are these? Zifin Amar Rabbi Yochanan b'nei Adam HaMezayfin Divrayim. They falsify their words. They are liars and slanderers. Their lie was to claim falsely that they had the ability to hand David over to Shaul. That was a lie. Rabbi Elazar Omer al Shem Makoman. And Zif is because they're called Zif because of the place of their origin. K'etziv Zif batelem ublos. Zif, Telem, and Blos. Upasku Anshe Amana, there were no longer people of faith. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Eile b'nei Adam she'maminim b'HaKadosh Baruch Hu. These are people who put all their trust in the Holy One. This Sanya Rabbi Lezer Gadol Omer called me sheyesh lo pas b'salo. He right now all he has is one bread in his basket, enough for that day. But yet he declares ma'ochel machar. But if he says, no, I don't have to worry about tomorrow, then he's a great Bal Emunah. And the Katnei Emunah say, what am I going to do tomorrow? What does it mean in the Pasuk, in Zechariah Navi, when it says, Ki mi vaz liyom katnus, those who derisive of the day of small things, mi garmel tzadikim, she is bazbeis, Shulchanam liyasid lavu, cause the righteous ones to have their table depleted in the world to come, a metaphor for schar. And the answer is katnish ahoya behem. They were small. They didn't lo aminu b'Hakadosh Baruch Hu. They didn't believe in Hashem. They worried from one day to the other. And that's called smallness of faith. Rav Amar elu katnei b'nei rishoy Yisrael. These are children, sons of the wicked of Israel, minor children who die in the lifetimes of their parents in divine punishment for their parents' iniquities. They ran their father's sentence in the world to come. So bizbiz is a homonym, which may mean to tear, milashon boza, or to expend, milashon mevazvizin. God's judgment against the sinner is metaphorically conceived as an edict or writ detailing the punishment to be accorded. When the writ is torn, the sentence is annulled. Thus, who ran the sentences that are awaiting the sinners on the approaching day, small ones, children. Okay, so we're now up to Daf Mem Tes. Thank you so much and have a great day.